Balake. Where is Balake at?
My name's Blake.
Do you want to go to war, Balake? I'm for real. Ron.
Ron is right here, everyone. Welcome back for more SPTV, where every day's a great day not to be in a cult. Let's talk about Scientology and Christianity today. I was inspired to do this video. I've covered this topic a little bit here and there every now and then, but some of these things are worth revisiting and worth re-emphasizing, because one of the biggest lies that Scientology and Scientologists tell, and they do this purely for PR value, is that you can be a Scientologist and be a Christian, and that Scientology is compatible with all other religious beliefs. And this is just the biggest lie. Now, I'm not doing this video because I am particularly for or against religion in general or any religious beliefs in general. Religion is something that I do not spend a lot of time thinking about. But you guys know my focus is on Scientology and exposing Scientology's abusive practices and beliefs and the lies that they tell in order to gain acceptance. Now, this thing about Scientology lying about Christianity is something I was very aware of and very much knew that we were doing, even when I was still a true believing Scientologist and a good little Scientology soldier. What I'm discussing here is not something I have just come to believe or come to understand or come to know since leaving Scientology. Even when I was a true believer and a good Scientology soldier, I knew very well that everything we said publicly about having respect for other religious beliefs and being compatible with other religious beliefs was a lie. And I knew it was a lie. I was okay with telling that lie because I knew that Scientology's goal of saving all spiritual beings in this sector of the Galactic Federation was worth having to lie to people on Earth in order to gain more acceptance, in order to make it more likely for us to be able to get more people into Scientology, blah, 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 blah. Typical ends justifies the means type stuff. Even as a young little Scientologist, I very much knew that what we really believed about all of the world's major religions is that they were fabrications that we as a planetary society were pre-programmed to develop over the centuries and over the millennia by the evil alien psychiatrists who had sent us to planet Earth to because Earth is a prison planet and we were being imprisoned here. And realize that when Scientologists hear this story, tell themselves this story, tell each other this story, talk about this story, they're talking about us as spiritual beings who in various planets and various solar systems and galaxies occupy physical bodies. And these bodies die and we pick up new bodies and we live lifetime after lifetime. But that, as spiritual beings, we're natively immortal and godlike and cannot die and do not even exist in space or time. And we created the physical universe to be our little play area, our little sandbox. And then we got trapped in it and we became the effect of it and all this kind of stuff. So I was very much aware that what we really believed is that once the evil alien psychiatrists managed to get us here on this prison planet called Earth, that they used various electronic means to sort of brainwash us as spiritual beings and give us false memories and give us false urges or implanted urges, like artificially implanted urges. And one of those urges was to, over time, create these religious beliefs. And it was something like, and also to create and foster the subject of psychiatry. It's almost like if you could listen in on the meetings that the evil alien psychiatrists were having with each other, as far as putting their plans in place for how to get society to keep itself under control, so that they'll never try to escape from this prison planet. They'd be saying things like, "Make them believe their bodies." Make them believe they only live one life. Make them believe they evolved from mud. I got an idea. Make them believe there's a heaven and a hell. If they don't know they live multiple lifetimes, they'll never try to get off this planet. Like, these are crazy things that even as a young, true believing Scientologist who had only ever been exposed to the lower level, non-confidential information in Scientology, I still knew that this is what we really believed. One of the reasons I think it's important to talk about this is because when I say one of the biggest lies that Scientology tells is that you can be a Christian and a Scientologist at the same time, or you can be a member of any of the other world's major religions and be a Scientologist at the same time. They tell this lie in part to convince the religious conservative right in the United States of America that the religious right should fight battles on behalf of Scientology because they want the religious right to believe Scientology, oh, they're like us. They are like us. If we allow people to go after Scientology, then maybe we will be next. And Scientology uses key members like Greta Van Susteren and also a person named Joy Villa. They use Greta Van Susteren and Joy Villa to try and infiltrate the religious right of America's political establishment. Now, Joy Villa has been largely laughed out of those circles, politically speaking. But recently, I don't know how many of you noticed, I've seen these ads popping up on my social media feeds. Joy Villa seems to have partnered up with Dennis Prager and Prager University. And Joy Villa is being used to promote conservative religious messages when, as a Scientologist, Joy Villa is actually very much anti-Christianity. And the more members of the conservative religious wing of not only American culture, but American politics understands that Scientology is fundamentally actually anti-religion. And it is a sham that they try to pretend that the Scientology belief system is compatible with any other religious belief systems. And so just in order to help shine some light on that, to continue to help shine some light on that, I want to share with you an excerpt of something L. Ron Hubbard wrote in a bulletin back in 1963. And the name of the bulletin is called Heaven. And this is where L. Ron Hubbard says he's been to heaven. He visited heaven, which is to say, he visited the place on the planet where the false memories and false ideas about heaven were implanted into the spiritual subconscious of the beings who were then sent to Earth. Oh, God, it's so crazy. But this is true, guys. This is L. Ron Hubbard really wrote this stuff. Instead of screen sharing it, I'm just going to read it because it's going to help me with editing later on for the Clips channel. Okay, so let's see. I'm reading from a website here, but later when I do the clips, I'm going to do some images on the screen. Okay, so this says in 1963 was a particularly strange year for pronouncements from L. Ron Hubbard. That spring, the spring of 1963, L. Ron Hubbard made the startling breakthrough that many of humankind's problems were caused by something called implants. Now, guys, implants are, like I said, these false memories, false urges, false beliefs, false desires that the evil alien psychiatrists somehow program into us spiritually using various means of electronic beams and capturing spirits on poles that have electric current running through them. It's all sorts of weird stuff. Even as a Scientologist, the whole thing of implants and how they were done and all that never really made a ton of sense to me, but I generally understood what they were supposed to be. So he says that mankind's problems are caused by these things called implants that were forcibly given to us as spiritual beings trillions of years ago. And on May 11th, L. Ron Hubbard announced that he had been to heaven, a claim which would come back to haunt him in future years. It turned out that, in fact, heaven was a gigantic hoax. He said that the date of the heaven implant was approximately, let me get this right, 43,891,832,611,177 years ago, 344 days, 10 hours, 20 minutes, and 40 seconds from 10:02 p.m. daylight Greenwich time, May 9th, 1963. How about them apples? Presumably, it says nobody had told L. Ron Hubbard that daylight Greenwich time does not actually exist. Oopsie! I guess L. Ron Hubbard was an all-knowing being, but that was just one little gap in his knowledge. Okay, so I'm not going to. What follows is a whole lot of paragraphs of L. Ron Hubbard describing the two different series of implants that collectively has caused mankind to have this belief in a heaven and a hell and the corresponding religious beliefs. Okay, skipping down to a lower section of this. The section says the moral which Hubbard drew from was decidedly anti-Judeo-Christian. And the following is a quote from L. Ron Hubbard. We have our hands on an appalling piece of technology where the world is concerned. With rapidity and an e-meter, it can be shown that heaven is a false dream and that the old religion, Christianity, was based on a very painful lie, based on a cynical betrayal. What does this do to any religious nature of Scientology? It strengthens it. New religions always overthrow the false gods of the old. They do something to strengthen man. We can improve man. We can show the old gods false. And we can open up the universe as a happier place in which a spirit may dwell. What more can you expect? This actually places us far beyond any other beings that are about. It puts us through increased beingness and a restoration of life in control of much destiny. We have now only a few unsolved problems about life, huge though they may be, such as the construction of bodies. And how does one establish the character of beings who are making trees and insects? And how does one communicate with these beings? There's a few things like these, but I imagine when we finally manage to communicate with beetles under rocks and free them, we will no doubt find the creator of heaven, who 43 plus trillion years ago designed and built the pearly gates and entrapped us all. See, he's actually talking about the creator of heaven as being the evil alien psychiatrist who implanted these false memories into us collectively. He says, good Lord, I'd hate to be guilty of that overt. An overt in Scientology means a destructive act. And he goes, but never mind, you aren't either. That guy is gone, I hope. So now this whole quote comes from a technical bulletin, a Scientology technical bulletin that he wrote on May 11th, 1963, called Heaven. And I don't actually have a copy of the technical volumes of Scientology, but I've texted someone who does and asked them if this bulletin from May 11, 1963 actually exists in one of the recent versions of the technical volumes, or if it's long since been removed. It's one of the things that David Miscavige has done over the decades is when he releases a new version of Scientology material, he says that any of the changes that have been made is because they discovered that some things were in fact alterations of what L. Ron Hubbard had really wrote, and other people had changed this, and other people had changed that, and other people had added this, and other people had removed that. In reality, the edits that David Miscavige makes is to remove things that are actually really embarrassing for Scientology, things that L. Ron Hubbard said that David Miscavige would rather never appeared in the materials of Scientology. It is interesting how L. Ron Hubbard David Miscavige has to convince Scientologists that over time he's making Scientology more and more pure, but really all he's doing is taking out the stuff he doesn't really like. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, this is the other part. This is hilarious, guys. Okay, so this website goes on to say, this Heaven bulletin aroused a great deal of attention and derision when it was publicized in the 1965 Anderson Report in Australia. The Church of Scientology subsequently tried to claim that L. Ron Hubbard had merely been writing metaphorically. Unfortunately for the Church of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard was very specific on this point and added at the end of the bulletin, it says, note, this HCO bulletin is based on over 1,000 hours of research auditing, analyzing the facsimiles of the reactive mind. And with the help of the Mark V e-meter, It is a scientific research and not in any way based upon the mere opinion of the researcher. This HCO bulletin is not the result of the belief or beliefs of anyone. Scientology data reflects long, arduous, and painstaking research over a period of some 30 years into the nature of man, the mind, the human spirit, and its relationship to the physical universe. The data and phenomena discovered in Scientology is common to all minds and all men and can be demonstrated on anyone. Truth does not require belief to be truth any more than water requires anyone's permission to run downhill. The data itself can be duplicated by any honest researcher or practitioner. We in Scientology seek freedom, the betterment of man, and the happiness of the individual, and this comprises our attitude towards the data found. The data, however, is simply itself and exists whatever the opinion of anyone may be. The contents of this HCO bulletin discover the apparent underlying impulses of religious zealotism and the source of the religious mania and insanity which terrorized Earth over the ages and has given religion the appearance of insanity. As the paper is written for my friends, it has, of course, a semblance of irreverence. Oh my God. Oh my God. This reminds me of the interview that David Miscavige did with Ted Koppel on Nightline back in God, was it the very late 80s or the very early 90s? I have a copy of it on my channel with chapter breaks and descriptions and everything like that. And Ted Koppel, while David Miscavige was sitting in front of him live on television, played an excerpt of an L. Ron Hubbard lecture where L. Ron Hubbard talked about how he doesn't know what the big deal is about. He doesn't know why people make such a big deal about space and it being so cold, and that space can actually be quite warm. I'm talking about like outer space can actually be quite warm. And L. Ron Hubbard was telling an anecdote of how he just recently, just for fun, had exteriorized from his body and gone out into space and just hung out in the Van Allen belt, which is a high radiation area of space, someplace around the Earth. And he said it was actually quite warm. It was actually quite pleasant. He doesn't know what the big deal is. And this is a reference in a lecture that most Scientologists who've been around for a few years have heard. Like, Scientology doesn't try to hide these lectures. Like, this whole idea that as a spiritual being, you can causatively leave your body and have out of body experiences and go essentially teleport to anywhere in the universe that you want. These are things that Scientologists casually discuss because these are abilities that you are supposed to be able to regain after getting enough Scientology auditing. So it wouldn't even make sense for Scientology to hide the fact that L. Ron Hubbard tells stories like this in his lectures, because these are the things that Scientologists are told. These are the abilities they are told that they will regain as natively immortal, godlike spiritual beings. And yet, so David Miscavige, it's one of the few times he actually seemed genuinely uncomfortable in the interview, pretended that he had never heard that. He had never, he at first he said, oh, that was just a lecture that he was given, speculating about the nature of the universe. And then they cut to a commercial break, and then they came back from the commercial break, and Miscavige is like, oh, by the way, just so you know, I've actually never heard that before. I've never heard that before. You could tell the producer was in Ted Koppel's ear, giving him the date and title of the lecture. And Ted Koppel actually pressed Miscavige on this and actually got him to double down and triple down that you're saying you have never even heard this excerpt of this LRH lecture before, which to a Scientologist would be hilarious and an obvious lie, because it's one of the very popular lectures that are published as standalone lectures. I think it's part of what they call the Keystone series. I might be misremembering, but it's some word like that. Most of L. Ron Hubbard's lectures are published in large collections of lectures of 10, 20, 30, 40 lectures. But some of the most favorite, some of the greatest hits, Ron's greatest hits, are published as standalone lectures. And the one where he talks about hanging out at the Van Allen belt is one of those standalone lectures. Of course, David Miscavige had heard that before. I'm just reminded of that. When the Australian government gets its hand on this bulletin and they're like, he was just speaking, that was a metaphor. That was a metaphor. Cut to L. Ron Hubbard's footnote. This is not a metaphor. They're like, that's not L. Ron Hubbard's bag, baby. Cut to the footnote. L. Ron Hubbard's like, this is most definitely my bag, baby. Oh my goodness. You know, the subject of Scientology lying about its compatibility with Christianity and the world's mainstream religions, to me, in my heart and in my soul, I feel like this conversation relates to the effort to eventually get Scientology's tax exempt status revoked. Scientology trying to make allies out of the conservative religious wing of America and of American politics is part of a larger effort to make sure there will never be political support in Congress and the Senate to review and revoke Scientology's tax exempt status. Scientology wants religious groups to believe that Scientology rightfully belongs underneath their umbrella of protection. Anyone who considers themselves to be some sort of a leader in the religious political space would be very well served to understand how Scientology is trying to dupe the religious community in this country and in American politics. And I think the natural, the reflex amongst, I keep using this phrase, but amongst the religious wing of society and politics should be to want to keep Scientology. No, we're not with them. Those guys aren't part of us. We don't, those guys are not compatible with us. Those guys, that's different than us. The reflex should be to understand that Scientology is trying to co-opt you guys. They're trying to trick you into fighting their battles for them. You'd be much better off being like, you can't sit with us. No. You cannot sit with us. Speaking of which, how's that tax? I heard you got your tax exempt status by threatening the IRS. I heard there's a ruling. I heard the Supreme Court has ruled that donations to Scientology are tax deductible. So you're telling me there's a Supreme Court ruling that's never been challenged or overturned or anything that directly contradicts your later tax exempt status. I think maybe we should hold some hearings into this. So especially since over the next few months, we are going to be working on a concerted effort to get every candidate, everyone currently running for a seat in the House of Representatives. We're going to be running an effort to get every single one of those candidates to comment on whether they would support holding congressional hearings into Scientology's tax exempt status. Since that's something we're going to be doing for the next 12 weeks, I think it also makes sense to, at the same time, continue to have this conversation about how Scientology is using, tricking, and lying to the religious community in this country and in politics. And let's continue to signal boost what L. Ron Hubbard really said about religion. What do Scientologists really believe about religion? What did they really say, not only about Christianity, but all of the world's mainstream religions? I knew, even as a good little young Scientologist, that we weren't really a religion. We were our own thing. We were completely separate from anything that had ever done before. But we had to call ourselves a religion, and we had to pretend that we were a religion so that anyone who criticized us, we could call them religious bigots. I knew that. Everyone knew that. We all knew that. So anyway, deep thoughts with AA Ron. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. That's pretty much all I got, you guys. I got much more coming this afternoon. Oh, by the way, new statistics out. Last month on this channel, we had about 400,000 unique viewers. YouTube has shown us on the stats on the back end, 35% of all of those people, so what is that, about 100, 140, 160,000 people, are not subscribed to this channel. Guys, if I could get just a fraction of those folks to subscribe, I would pretty quickly get to my next major milestone of 300,000 subscribers. And that would be pretty awesome. So if you're watching my stuff, if you like watching my stuff and you're not yet subscribed, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Thank you, as always, to everyone who watches until the very end, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here. Bye.